Welcome everyone to the Riverwood Poetry Series. As many of you know, in normal times, we'd be gathering at Real Artways in Hartford, which has been our home for the last several years. But these are not normal times, so here we are, you in your living room, maybe in your pajamas, maybe with a martini or a glass of wine. Wherever you are, I hope you're comfortable and ready for a great night of poetry. I'm going to make just a couple of announcements before we introduce our featured poets. I first want to thank Real Artways for all their support in matters of publicity, providing the venue in normal times, and their help with Zoom. I'd especially like to acknowledge Ian Alley Seals, who is the man behind the Real Artway curtain. You might see the logo up on the Zoom. He's back there with all the knobs and dials, making the Zoom happen and providing support if we run into any glitches. We've been doing this for close to a year now, I believe, and things have gone pretty smoothly, but pardon us in advance if we run into any difficulties. Speaking of technical issues, please make sure that you remain muted during the reading. We will have a Q&A after the featured poets, where you'll have a chance to speak. And additionally, we have an open mic following the reading where, of course, you'll unmute and read your poems for us. I also want to acknowledge the Riverwood Poetry Series board members. It's not as easy as it looks to put together a poetry series and keep it going for, I don't know, has it been 14 years maybe at this point? So if the board members would wave or shout out or do something, when I call out their names, we've got Debbie Gilbert, Joan Hoffman, Pat Hale, Sherry Bedingfield, Kathleen McIntosh, and I am Julia Paul. I am your host tonight. Thank you, everyone, for coming, attending the event tonight. I hope you enjoy it. And I hope you join us for our final two events of this crazy season, both of which will be held on Zoom. On April 13th, we'll be introducing the anthology that was inspired by Connecticut's poet laureate, Margaret Gibson, who is also the editor of the anthology. She put a call out to Connecticut poets to submit poems on the theme of the natural world and the eco crisis that we face. So we'll have 12 of those poets reading their poems during that event. Margaret will also be here introducing that anthology and speaking a little bit about what inspired it. So that should be a wonderful event. There will not be an open mic that night simply because we have so many poets reading. On May 11th, which is our final event of this season, we'll be featuring Vivian Shipley. And for those of you who are familiar with her, I think you'll agree with me that she's one of the most admired and respected poets in all of Connecticut and beyond our boundaries as well. There will be an open mic for our last event, so start writing your poems for May 11th. There will be also a Q&A tonight after the featured poets read their work. And at some point, I'm going to put into the chat places where you can find their books. So if you see me squinting at the screen and looking weird, it's because I'm trying to figure out how to type into the chat. So without any further ado, I am going to introduce Max Early, who will read for us first. He comes to us from one of my favorite places in the entire world, the land of enchantment, New Mexico. In fact, it was at a poetry reading in Santa Fe that I first heard Max read his work, and I was determined to bring him to Riverwood, and he did read for us several years ago. He came from New Mexico to Connecticut in February. I think it was one of the coldest Februarys on record. I felt so bad dragging him all this way just to freeze to death. But he should be today reading from his home in New Mexico. Max is the author of Ears of Corn Listen, in which he incorporates his native language, I'm not sure I pronounce it correctly, Karasen,
yes,
into the poems. Max was the 2015 Lannan Foundation Indigenous Writer in Residence Fellow at the School of Advanced Research. He received his MFA from the Institute of American Indian Arts in Santa Fe. In addition to being an accomplished poet, Max is also a renowned award-winning potter whose pieces appear in the permanent collections of many prestigious museums across the country. He is of the Turkey clan and the Bear clan and is from the Pueblo of Laguna and currently lives in Paguate, I'm saying that right, New Mexico. Max also shared with me that last October, during the COVID crisis, he built a greenhouse to save his garden from the frost, and he didn't realize that this space would soon become his retreat. We all were looking for a place to escape to during the COVID shutdown. He says, the pleasure of walking into summer on a winter's quarantine day is uplifting. Being in my greenhouse for a couple of hours takes me to my realm of serenity. Sounds so perfect. He's planted Swiss chard, lemon, thyme, sage, leeks, carrots, radishes, and a variety of chili to spice up the salsas. So now that I've made everybody hungry, I'll turn it over to Max.
Thank you, Julia, and thank you to the Riverwood Poetry Series for hosting me. Kwaya Waashch'ee, good evening, everybody. I'm coming to you from Paguate, New Mexico. That's we live one of the 6 villages in Laguna, Pueblo. And I'll go ahead and read one of my new works. I just graduated last May from the Institute of American Indian Arts in Santa Fe. And I have a manuscript and a lot of poems that I want to get out there. So this is one of them. The title of this poem is called March. A stellar winter serpent tosses hail like a handful of silver coins, falling down a wishing well. Vernal pool frogs swallow shed skin like edible kiwi peelings, served on spring equinox. Sheer essence of entrancement, Earth's orbit, elliptical, oval movements as sun crosses celestial equator, vast circle above. My first poetry book is Ears of Corn Listen, and since we're in almost at spring, so I'll go ahead and read the poem. It's a pantoum, and it's called Conveying Spring Rains. Spring skies parched, clear and white blue. Rainmaker smokes with mountain spirits, puffing cumulus clouds over Tsina. Deserts are rainless without a dance. Rainmaker smoking with mountain spirits. Thunder clouds burst over mesa tops of Pinon. Deserts are rainless without a dance. Raindrops are always perfectly round. Thunder clouds burst over mesa tops of cedar. Somewhere rain is falling on Mother Earth, so raindrops are always perfectly round, tapping ponds like rapid drum beat circles. Somewhere rain is falling on Mother Earth to herald the Shiwana on southwestern lands, tapping ponds like rapid drum beat circles. Frogs croak their chants and dance once more. Herald the Shiwana on southwestern lands with the water designs of drizzling cloud drops. Frogs croak their chants and dance once more. Sunrise ends their showering leap of music. With water designs of drizzling cloud drops, women draw water in painted bird oyas. Sunrise ends their showering leap of music. Now they walk bearing jugs above their heads. Women draw water in painted bird oyas. Red woman and blue woman balance as they walk, bearing jugs above their heads, home to their mother, Shikaya's house. Red woman and blue woman balance, dawdling along the ditch of running stream, home to their mother, Shikaya's house. Red woman swaying pot, spots, sister's eye. Dawdling along the ditch of running stream, corn leaves glisten bright with drops of dew. Red woman's swaying pot, spots, sister's eye. Blue woman reaches up, saving, sliding Oya. Corn leaves glisten bright with drops of dew. In the mud, Shikaya wears no moccasins. Blue woman reaches up, saving, sliding Oya, yet loses her pose and her pottery falls. In the mud, Shikaya wears no moccasins, and she says, "Pacha, let it rain." She loses her pose and her pottery falls, like a cloud still clinging to a rainbow. When she says, "Pacha, let it rain," Mother Earth becomes filled once again. Like a cloud still clinging to a rainbow, we look for arrowheads after the storm. Mother Earth becomes filled once again, puffing cumulus clouds over Tsipina. We look for arrowheads after the storm. Spring skies parched, clear and white blue. This next poem is it's like a poem I wrote when I was in school, but I had it on the back burner, and with the pandemic starting back last March, it just unfolded on its own. And this poem is called "Isolated." Turquoise skies blindfold horizon, black sash belt morning. Half-filled coffee cup with cream, pool stick lingers by bar stool. Cascading stacks of eggshells crackle on cedar in smoking firebox. She pinches clay finger bowls, painted cloud designer dreams. Albino coyotes ruling class, finger points till arm goes numb. Now arriving at herbal OSHA bombs, airplane touches down on stained glass. Red-eye flight on Tiffany runway, pilot shakes moccasin rattle. Jingle dress dancers revive health through aisles of canceled powwows. Distant squash blossom phone calls from shooting star ribbon elders wearing coral silver bead necklaces. They string bows with damp suet. Dove plumes flutter on warm breeze, a cellular prayer without towers. He tosses corn husks over bridge by floating eagle carcass. Waterfall trickles through driftwood, skeleton of cholla cactus. Arroyo Creek walls, what stifles the laughter of an enemy? Pottery shards crushed to sand, baby blanket sifts uranium bones. Village of dayrise and sunfall, framed in field of tall wheat. Windows of abandoned bodies, ladder, electric ventilators. His concealed rest departs the dweller. Next poem is called Relative Passing. Smoke cloud through the looking glass, past of black and white ghosts. Empty colored gulps of vapor, fuse parch and starving growls. Preparing food for the dead. Shumo Zibewatrani. Steaming chili stew mingles with breath blown on bowl. Cool down my thoughts of you, small dish of morsels, Ganeshia. Cool down your thoughts of me. Ash yawns in orange coals, smoking yesterday's meals. Come eat and savor my yearning. Shumo Zibewatrani. This is another new poem from my manuscript. It's called Breathe. A gray shadow on shiny clay water. I splash and eddy, no release. From vortex spiral centrum. I'm clay, I'm skin, I'm purple. My shady trace spies me. A cuttlefish, deep sea black. He prefers shunned light. Exhale. Dark bluish mud ton, dissolved skin. Inhale. At first mesa, strolling along plaza rooftops, I snag a yucca basket filled with long life songs and dance prayers. Exhale. Touch the pattern weave, 1, 3, 5. Puzzle to find green woven net. Puzzle to find green woven nests, half submerged in ocean floors. Hummingbird nests, never reaching stratospheric realms, left behind by rain-drenched ants, all washed to sea. Dig deeper through silt, micaceous sediment, to emerge like a mud mummy swimming towards the surface. Inhale. I'll go ahead and read another poem from Ears of Corn Listen. This will introduce my next subject, deer hunting. It's very precious to us here in the Pueblos. We go out deer hunting, but the deer is also like a relative could have passed, or they bring us substance, and so we elevate them, their spirit, and give thanks to them. And we have a big dinner and we invite relatives, and it's that part of that renewal and part of the winter solstice. So this poem is called In the Black Blue Hue of Sunrise Dawn. In the black blue hue of sunrise dawn, Mother Fire keeps me warm. I pray and breathe on the dry flowers, an offering to the deer spirit. Consumed by the flame, my prayers go up in smoke, rainbow full of colors for the deer to see. They say, Mu pukst kashtatsi, gayanye, tro ekoshe. Look at the beautiful rainbow. Let's go over there. Climbing the hill in pursuit, fresh deer tracks everywhere. Directly in front of me, Gaik Bashro, the rays of sunrise glisten on the antlers. We have found the rainbow. Now it's time to go home. Home to the mountain line, singing hunting songs of praise, tribute and honor to the deer. Corn pollen prayers scatter in the wind. Bless us again, dear spirit. My next poem, I'm happy to say, will be forthcoming in Inkwell Journal this month in their volume 36. And this poem commemorates my grandparents. They're gone now, but just those memories that I had with them that we spent together. And this poem is called Hoofs Drifting Across Grass. November night in small town Cuba, warm cabin in lieu of chilly canvas. Bedroll laid out, I sleep below my grandparents' motel bed. A sudden 3 a.m. request, Tro'o, let's go, she says. I sip coffee and scurry by the kitchenette stove. Grandpa's warming the truck up. On high desert pinon cedar hills, our campfire in dark beaming woods. Bacon, eggs, with bread on the flame. Grandma's fried red chili flakes. Sunrise ashes bless my rifle. Guide us, mountain lion man, and the mountain lion within me. Track fearless with patient pursuit. Mid-morning, bedded down in gray leaf briar, a leaping gat of does hurtle through a thick sagebrush draw as fog drifts on thin forest air. My index finger points, but grandma tells me, corrects me with her pointed thumb. My head nods. I use my thumb to shorten the distance between hunter and game. Afternoon, we ride hills after hills across arroyos and valley clearings to a place I caught my deer the previous open season. I hike to an overlooking mesa top. Grandpa walks to the dry creek. Close by the truck, Grandma prowls with her red scarf over her head. I scout towards a large oak grove as quick sounds of leaves crush and crunch. I crouch down, my eyes focus on swift hoofs drifting across the grass. My head turns, I hear whoo whoo. I sprint towards the mesa's cliff ledge. Grandma's hands raised sideways by her ears. She yells, Mama Waashch'ee, Shedzuk Duewa. She peels an orange while her rifle leans on the rock. The buck runs to the mesa bottom and pauses within Grandma's range. She grabs her gun, her finger pulls the trigger, her rifle clicks and jams as the mule deer's ears twitch. The buck bolts off like a field missile. She lowers her one chance, wishing we return to Grandpa's faded maroon truck. Grandma sighs and says, Gaika, Gaika, all the way home, Gaika. Grandpa tells her, you're always saying, Iyo kushunat. That's why you didn't catch your deer. The following year, my grandparents both said it was too cold for them to go hunting. I brought back a buck for my grandma Linda and cherished the last time we went together. I'll go ahead and close with this last poem. It's called Ingrained. And I always wanted to write a poem about grinding stones, because grinding stones shared the essence of our people and fed the people and nourished us throughout migration, throughout our journey here to where we are in New Mexico. But we carried those stones with us, and every clan would have their own grinding songs. And so we have 14 clans in our pueblo, and so those grinding stones that go from a rough grain to medium medium grind until it's finely milled. So this is a tribute to our grinding stones. Ingrained. Only once at dawn I unearthed a grinding stone buried on a dirt roof by the old horse corrals. She sang Yaana clan songs when there were those songs at the field barren and full of tumbleweeds, the land parched as potted polenta or peeling paint. Her skin was black lava, her hair shelled white corn. Her body curved like a half-moon crescent. Her face, rounded smooth, has thinned from where, like sand, the oceans washed ashore in the rise and fall of tide. On Hawaiian black sand beach, the flavor of salt woman and red seaweed and slender green. An heirloom seed planted on a warm mid-afternoon day, sprouting, then fading as songs wither into stillness, or bushes of sumac berries in the abandoned field. Red fruit the deer devour, tart and tangy as hibiscus lemon tea. A mist arises when the stone recalls the clan women's voices. Singing her songs, she remembers the rhythmic milling sounds of mano and matate. She yearns for cornmeal or wheat flour, infusing her porous thoughts. She cherishes the last song sung to her. She hums forgotten tones. I lift her up and say, come home with me, rest in Cusco's garden, sing with me. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, Max. That was really a joy. And I hope we get to talk to you a little bit more during the Q&A. There's so many references that are kind of foreign to us in New England, where probably most of us are coming from. But, you know, the arroyos, the piñons, the mesas, all of that is foreign to our geography here, or our topography. So yeah, I'd love to talk a little bit more about some of that and how that, you know, is so present in your poetry.
Yes, definitely.
Okay, so now I'm going to introduce Cheryl Savageau, who has also read for Riverwood once before, and we're so honored to have her back. Cheryl is a poet and a memoirist of Abenaki descent. She's the author of 3 poetry collections, Mother/Land and Unhistory of the Northeast, Home Country, and Dirt Road Home, which was a finalist for the Paterson Poetry Prize and was nominated for Pulitzer Prize as well. Her most of the Crazywoods, which I believe we'll hear some passages from tonight. Cheryl has been awarded numerous fellowships, has mentored Native writers, and teaches Indigenous literatures and creative writing at the Breadloaf School of English at Middlebury College. Cheryl tells me something that's not typically in her bio, that she's also a textile artist. The quilt that you see behind her is the cover of her memoir. She tells me it's called Jazz Autumn Quarter Notes Triplets. So hopefully in the Q&A we get a little bit more about how the quilt is named. Maybe, she tells me she spends her COVID days enjoying new toppings on popcorn and writing poems inspired by tarot cards. So hopefully we'll hear some of those poems in the future. So I am honored to introduce Cheryl Savageau as our next reader.
Thank you very much. I'm so happy to be here again. I actually wanted to start by reading a poem. That's not a new poem. It's actually a fairly old poem, but I like to read it at this time of year. It's really the only time that it feels appropriate. It's called Equinox the Goldfinch. It is as if he had swallowed the sun, which slept the winter inside him until he forgot what it was like to live in warmth and golden. But his body has the knack of timing. For weeks now, golden feathers have appeared among the gray and khaki brown. Now his back is mottled with ice floes drifting in water that is not blue, but shining purest yellow. He rides upon the cusp of winter, and he is full of sun. It is too much for him to bear. His throat swells with it, and he pushes the sun out into the air, where it turns immediately to song. The notes fall back to him, and he tries again, head back, throwing the sun into the air, and it returns to him, and yet again and again. There is no end to this light that is filling him. It is the sun. He has become the sun. His song shimmers with light, and his body blossoms into yellow. So I want to start by reading from my memoir. And although it's a memoir, it's partly poetry and partly prose. So I was thinking about what I wanted to read and some of the sort of threads that go through this. And one of the things that was happening as I was sort of going through a time of healing was that I was also learning language. And the word bipolar, always felt very vertical to me. It's like you're up, you're down, whatever. But I got a different way to think about this because of the language I was learning. And I think this is like a much more sort of horizontal earth-place way to think about it. So this is called Bagua and Tekwa. We are studying language together. We've made flashcards with pictures on them and words on reverse so we can quiz each other. We will never be fluent, never really be able to speak, but it is something, this learning. Nebi, water, nebizon, medicine water. Also, those streams of experience that flow through us and make up our own personal power. I'm amazed. I wrote a whole poem to express this concept that is contained in one word in our language. Tekwa is moving, Bagua is stillness. River is Tekwa, lake is Bagua, stream is Tekwa, pond is Bagua, ocean is Bagua, waves are Tekwa. All life is water, and water in shifting balance, from Tekwa to Bagua and back again. The trees know about water. Their blood runs up the maple every spring, carrying sugar stored from the year before, sustenance to grow the new leaves, and enough for us to share. The sap is Tekwa. The leaves are Bagua, Bagua. You wouldn't think leaves and stillness just looking at a tree, how the leaves move in the slightest breeze, how they rustle against each other in the wind, but a deeper look into the tree, into the movement within the tree, and you see the tree as part of the circle of water, and the leaves as places of stillness. The sap, the blood of the tree, runs in rivers up to the branches and twigs, then finds a resting place in the leaves as brooks flow into a pond. The leaf is the place that holds water and sunshine and air for the great transformation to occur, where water and carbon dioxide become sweet food and oxygen. Bagua and Tekwa, stillness and movement. I want to learn from this. I want to find the calm stillness of a pond and the clear flow of running water. We, like the trees who are our ancestors, are beings of water. My rivers run high with rapids and whirlpools the stories say were created by the impetuous twin. The ponds have stagnated, become places with no give and take. The sunlight hurts. There is no sweetness here. Nothing flows in or out. No breeze moves the surface. So it gave me a way to think about bipolar as not bipolar, but as, connected to the land, to the waters, to stillness, and a clear flow rather than a torrent. And I think that that kind of being to think about it differently gives you a chance to come into some kind of balance. So this is called the Tarot, and I'm going to read it because this was a time when I was doing tarot cards day and night. It was very pathological, but there was something underneath it that drove it. And now, of course, I do love the cards, and I'm actually writing from the cards in a way that is a little less manic. There are over 20 decks in the maple chest. The Rider-Waite deck is the first deck I owned, the learning deck, the mother of all 20th century decks. The second deck, the round motherpiece deck with its childlike and women-centered images, is the feminist deck. I am the woman bathing in moonlight. I have spent a lot of time choosing the right homes for these decks. Some are wrapped in silk scarves, some are in embroidered and beaded bags. One deck is in a round black box painted with lilies. A few are still in their original boxes, waiting. These are the journeys I take now, far from the witchcraft in the outside world. Journeys through the cards, through dimensions where the figures in the cards talk to me, tempt me to stay longer than I should, give me gifts. I remember that when in the land of fairy, you mustn't eat or drink, or you may be caught there. An evening, 20 years, a lifetime in an afternoon. I spend entire days lost in the cards, laying out one spread after another, changing decks and comparing results, and time passes without my knowing. I am trying to find my life in these cards. In this card, the young man sits cross-legged on the lotus flower and plays flute for me. I breathe the music in like incense. The tall woman in purple looms over me. I look up into her distant face, but she does not speak. I join the three women dancing, dancing. We are sisters, we are young, we are dancing, holding hands in the sun, in the moonlight. Beware the swords, they are all sorrow. Here is the one I fear, the nightmare card. It is the Bosch painting over the lover's bed, the heart pierced 3 times. A woman is walking toward me across a plain of swaying grass, her hand in the mane of a lion. She is all red and gold fire. She knows I want her. I spread the cards in crosses, in rows, circles, and pyramids. I am riding on the rim of a giant wheel. Where it stops, nobody knows. The dog is barking at the top of the stairs. The woman is floating out of her body. The man is hanging by 1 foot. I am the woman dancing drunk on the roof, too close to the edge. I have several different pieces that are about diagnosis, but I want to read this one. It's called Yates. He spends the first 2 sessions taking a history of my life, my family. He is cold and precise. I feel like a bug under a glass. He is counting every hair, every facet of my eyes, the number of legs and the veining of wings. He can classify me as beetle, wasp, dragonfly. He classifies me as bipolar. He is wrong, he is wrong, he is wrong. Not only that, but he sees others in my family who are probably bipolar too. My grandfather, my brother, and the cousins who've actually been diagnosed. But I'm not like them, I say. I don't drink, I don't use drugs, not since college anyway. He tells me a story about the poet Yeats, whose daughter was institutionalized, how he told Jung, the famous psychologist, that he couldn't understand it. She is drowning, Jung told him, in the water you are swimming in. Do you understand, he asked me? They are self-medicating because they are drowning. You are swimming. Up north, the swirling waters of the Pemi have carved a basin in the granite rock. What does it mean to swim in a whirlpool? This one's called Jungle Road. I am driving home from night class down what my son will later call Jungle Road because of how the trees loom, the way their branches hang over the car as we drive, the calls of jays, the drones of cicadas. That is years ahead of us. Tonight I am driving home alone. It's late. The high beams weave back and forth with the curves. The trees are dark. If I turn off the lights, I will be lost in them. I am driving fast, taking each curve way to the outside, and I come to the walls made of stone and brick that line the road just before it opens out into the bright lights of Route 20. I think it would be so nice to drive into that wall, that one there, the old-fashioned stone wall without mortar. I could just rip right through it and be done with it. But at the last minute, I turn. I think of my son sleeping in his crib. He expects me in the morning as sure as sunrise. I turn the wheel. I come to a full stop before entering the traffic. I use my blinker before turning left onto the island. I drive down the dirt road. I make it home. This is called Voices. There is nowhere that can be quiet enough because I am carrying these conversations inside my head. I don't know who they are, these voices, but they are not mine. Murmuring, murmuring, like in a theater hall before the concert begins. I strain to hear the words, but I can't. It's just an undercurrent, murmuring, murmuring, with waves that come and go. I can't write this because I'm afraid they will begin. I will have to be quiet as I whisper this to you. Sometimes the voices get louder, but no more comprehensible. It's not that they are speaking a different language. It's just that everyone is speaking at once, chattering, chattering. I remember when I realized how big the inside of my head is. The entire universe somehow fits inside. If I go to the center of my mind, the edges are infinite. So where does this echo come from? I carry the voices around for days, for weeks, decades. I'm exhausted from listening. I try to hear what they're saying, but I can't. I never can. This is a party I can't walk away from. These guests were not invited. They are intruders. They come and go whenever they want. My mind is their crash pad. I have several different pieces on here called Crazy Talk, and they're all about therapists. So I did finally find a good therapist, and I think it's crucial to my healing, but this was before that. Crazy Talk, lonely. This therapist likes to ask if I ever feel lonely. You spend a lot of time alone, she says. Yes, but when I'm writing, I don't feel alone. Well, when do you feel lonely, she asks. At parties, I say. At parties and the middle of cities. So what do you do then when you feel lonely, she asks. I go into the woods, I tell her. I find a brook or a pond and sit on a log or a stump. Yes, she says. She shakes her head impatiently. But you're still alone, she says. Alone? I'm never alone in the woods. She doesn't believe me. She sees the woods as a world of objects, what she calls a romanticized landscape. She doesn't see it as a peopled world. The maples, oaks, birches, the cattails and reeds, the fish and beavers, the chipmunks, the ants, dragonflies, the deer, bear, even the mosquitoes, all people, all of us together. How could I possibly be lonely here? She shakes her head. I'm resisting, she tells me. I'm avoiding the subject. How can she ever help me heal when she won't listen to what heals me? So I want to read a couple of newer poems, not leave you in that place. So I've been writing these tarot poems, and the first part of the tarot, there are tarots in two sections. It's called the Major Arcana and the Minor Arcana. And the Major Arcana are like, it came from the Middle Ages, and there's like kings and queens and priestesses and popes and all that kind of stuff. But there's also qualities and figures from sort of the Christian mythos. This one is called The Devil, and it's from the Fae Tarot. He wears the face of an animal, this one who devours forests. His body is a flame. He should have been put to sleep like those boulders who used to be men. The more he eats, the hungrier he gets. He can't eat fast enough. After this, there's another something to be devoured: a forest, a continent, an ocean, a planet. There's also cards for the sun, the moon, and stars. And I wanted to do this one. I've been wanting to write a book, actually a children's book about photosynthesis, because like it all starts with the sun and the green plants taking sun and turning it into sweet food, and essentially sending that energy of the sun, through the ecosystem, and also creating a beautiful atmosphere at the same time. So this is the sun. This is all there is: sun above and sunflowers below, and a yellow field with a thin stream trickling through it. There are tiny houses on the yellow hills. The sunflowers keep opening and opening. And this one is called The Magician. What is he doing, this fox, playing the shell game? One hand lifted to reveal a stone, the other ready to mix it up. He's working hard to con this red bird looking on, this mouse in a red hat and brown jacket, paws crossed behind his back. There are better things to do on this huge mushroom he's using for a table. Where are his tools? There are medicine plants all around. He hasn't figured out what real magic is. And I want to read Nebi. This Nebi I mentioned in the earlier piece means water. And when I was learning language, our language is very verb-based rather than noun-based. And when I started learning it, someone told me, if you were going to ask, for example, for a cup of coffee, you wouldn't say, "Would you give me a cup of coffee?" You'd say, "Coffee me," which I loved. So this, I wanted to use some of that construction in this poem, Nebi. And it starts with a quote from Poland, who was an Abenaki leader protecting the Paterson River in 1739. And he said, "This is the river I belong to." We breathe the traveling clouds and drink what falls glistening from cliffs and into whirlpool basins carved in granite on its way back to sky. Water me, glisten me, carve and whirlpool me, cascade me, white water me, sing me, babble me, pool me, pond me, swamp me, bog me, trout and salmon me, frog and dragonfly me, loon and otter me. Breathe me the humid sky while leaves gather pools of summer air. Nebi, we say, uli go nebi, the water is good. And do I have time for one more poem too? Okay. So I want to end with this poem, and I'm only going to read the end of the poem. Actually, it's a poem called Grandmother Knits, and I think about it as a poem sort of for all artists, all of us who are doing the work of survivance. I will knit a vest of feathers, a house of pine cones, a shawl of maple leaves. Here is a cape of birch bark, hats of ghost elms, moccasins of pine needles. I will knit a dress of fall grass, a coat of loon calls. I will knit a nightgown of lichens gathered from fallen logs. I will knit lace of maple syrup. I will knit a shield of raspberry canes, though my fingers will bleed. I will knit a spider web beaded with blueberries. I will knit a bed of corn silk. I will knit prayers of smoke. I will knit coverlets of cricket song, pillows of milkweed down, scarves from the long howls of coyotes. I will knit embraces of warm spring rains, sweaters of squash blossoms. I will knit whatever we need. My fingers will never be still. Thank you all so much.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. Yeah, I wish, we could all clap and cheer and, yell brava, bravo to Max and Cheryl. But I am sure everyone really enjoyed both of you and your work. And, you also bring in the natural world so well into your poems. And it's really surprising how much of that you bring into the memoir about bipolar. That's very surprising. So I'd like, to give people in attendance the opportunity to ask questions of Cheryl or Max. You'd have to unmute to do that. I was going to put how you can obtain their books into the chat, but when I tried, it was disabled. So I can tell you verbally, and maybe Ian can put it into the chat for us. Max's book can be found at the number 3, the letter A, Taos Press. And Taos is spelled T-A-O-S, Press. Correct, Max? Is that right? Okay. And Cheryl's memoir can be purchased through the University of Nebraska.
Yes.
I just lost where I had it written down. Just if they Google University of Nebraska and your name.
Yeah, University of Nebraska Press and my name, they'll find it.
Okay. Okay. And your books are also on Amazon, you
yes.
said.
But don't buy them this week because it's on strike.
Ah, okay. Stay away from Amazon this week. Okay, so I can't really see everybody. I have to go into gallery view. I see Denise Lego has a hand up. Did you want to ask a question?
Yes, this is a question for both of you. How does it feel to read to a screen as opposed to an audience? I praise you because that must be so hard.
So I think that question's for both Cheryl and Max. Basically it is tough for poets when we're used to seeing the reaction of the audience and hearing those little, when you hit a good spot in a poem. But so if you want to answer Denise's question.
I guess I'll go first. It was a little difficult at the beginning when we started doing more Zoom videos, but you get used to it overall. But yeah, that silence after you read a poem, usually we hear a clap or, the audience reaction to it is missing. So it's there and you can sense it virtually, but it's you just have to place yourself in that realm that we're in right now as far as staying socially distant. So other than that, it's not, you don't have to dress up as much too. I have just some shorts on right now and I have my shirt on, but just more casual than anything else. But when you're actually doing a poetry performance, I'll maybe wear a nice turquoise necklace or some silver or something, just to enhance the the verbal, visual essence of the reading.
Thank you.
Yeah, I feel the same way. It was difficult at the beginning, for those same reasons, and also there's just that energy in the room that is not there, the physical energy. But one of the things that I learned to do is to put it on gallery views so that I actually have a lot of faces on the screen, so that I have some sense of who's out there in the audience, and that seems to help, for me.
Thank you both. I appreciate it. And Cheryl, it was wonderful hearing your voice.
Thank you, Denise.
Anyone else have a question? You can unmute yourself. I can't see everybody to call on people that are not displayed right in front of me. So if you unmute and ask the question, I think that will work. Well, I'll ask a question. I'd like to know who your poetry heroes are, and I will throw that question out to both of you.
I don't think I have poetry heroes as such. I have favorite poems rather than favorite poets.
Oh, okay.
I think that all of us as poets, we write and we write and we write, and I think sometimes we're blessed. We get that a few really, really good ones, and so there have been a number of those in my life. And I guess I would say some of the poets, I like Yeats, I like Audre Lorde, I like James Wright, Joy Harjo, Deborah Miranda, who I think is one of the most brilliant poets writing right now. Here's some of the poets I can think of who have work that knocks me out. I want to add to that Etheridge Knight. I don't know. So many.
Yeah, I know it's hard to limit it, especially when you're put on the spot.
Right.
What comes to mind for you, Max?
There's a vast variety of poems and poets too. I would say, some of the more contemporary poets that I've been studying at school, so like Forrest Gander, rings a bell, and then just off the top, I'm thinking of also Joy Harjo is another one that just try to get the inspiration. But I always, when I read a new poet, I look at the form, I look at how it's presented on the page, and then I'll look at that poem and say, okay, could I write something like it but similar? And so I'll go line by line and create my own poem based on their poem, but it'll be totally different. And so you could even tell that poem came from that inspiration from that poet. So, but I think it's continuous. It's the same way with being a potter too. There's several potters that I admire myself, but then I'm always changing gears and looking for new techniques and different literary devices to use and create something unique and different.
Anyone out there have a question?
Yes, I have a question for Max. I was struck by your pantoum. I enjoyed your pantoum, and I wondered, do you like to write in form a lot?
Yeah, I can say I do quite a bit, but I'm always looking for different forms. As a potter, too, the designs that I use are similar, and so I go back and forth from that creative realm of seeing a design and then getting used to that form or design, and then using it several times until it becomes, mundane, and then I'll switch to a new form where it's totally brand new. So it's sort of like writing a series of poems. And so you would start with this form, like a pantoum or a satina or Villanelle. Then I've also developed my own forms while I was in my MFA program. And it's something that, just, it could come from boredom or it can come from repetition of, there's good poems out there, but there's all kinds of forms. That's the amazing part of, the opportunity to write and to write something, to solidify it on the page, but how it can go through so much revision over time and time again to where is that poem finally ready, to go out into the world. And then there's always that last, maybe the line should be changed, there's always a little twist here or a tweak there. So it's, but once it finds its place and it's grounded, then it becomes, where it needs to go and who it needs to be.
I'd like to respond to what you were saying about form, because I'm not somebody who works very much in established forms. I've always been what Denise Levertov likes to talk about as organic form, not free verse, but organic verse. So I think about my process as being more like a jazz musician, in that you're discovering the form as you're writing the poem. And what my goal would be, I guess, is that the form and the content are so wedded that you're not aware of it, that you're not aware of what's going on in terms of form. It just becomes invisible. And I think that's also true when you have an established form and you do it really, really well. I think the form disappears also, and it's just the spirit of the poem comes through. And that you don't really know until later. You sort of go, oh yeah, that was a sestina, or that was whatever, but it's invisible. So that sense of form and content being really wedded is important.
I saw Peggy had a question.
Yeah, speaking of form, this is for Cheryl. I think you're going to have all of us trying a poem that begins with all the lines begin with verbs. I found that fascinating, and I have to confess that as you were reading, I was already starting to think of my own verbs and what I would do to them. So is that poem in print, or where can I find that?
Let's see, Nebby, it was published in Yellow Medicine Review.
Yellow.
I don't remember. I'm sorry, I don't remember what issue it was in.
Okay. And it seems, so is that a form that you created yourself, or can you spoke of a cultural history to that, or background to that. Can you repeat that, please?
Oh yeah. So I've been learning language. I will never be fluent, but I was learning language, and people were just talking about it's a very verb-based language, Abenaki. It's not noun-based in the way that English is. And so there are things you would say that are much more verb. You'd say them more as a verb. Than you would as a. I'm not articulating this well at all. But anyway, the phrase that he was saying was, he wouldn't say, "Would you please give me a cup of coffee?" Whatever, you would say,
Right.
"Coffee me," so that coffee would itself become the verb, and that. It just made me think about all the things that a river or a lake do, that Nebby does, that water does, and thinking it all as all of that, everything involved with it as being a verb. And even human beings are a verb. We are continually becoming human, and that's our word for human being.
Great. Well, thank you.
While I'm still unmuted, I just wanted to say, Cheryl, I loved your goldfinch poem.
Oh, thank you.
What was the first line of that? The goldfinch swallows the sun, or?
It is as if he had swallowed the sun.
Yeah. I loved that.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for reading it. Yeah.
For both Max and Cheryl, did you grow up around the native language that you incorporate into your poetry, or did you have to learn it later as an adult?
It was kind of both, because you learn English, having to go to school in the first grade, but also the older people, my Pueblo talk. So as a child, you're hearing a lot of. It's like you speak it, but then or you hear. Living with my grandparents, they spoke the language, all the time in the morning. So I heard it all the time, which is something nowadays I don't hear as much. So that's I remember I'll dreaming in my language in Karis, and I'll be talking to my grandparents. But then it's like that's something that I write in my poetry now because that's what I miss.
Mm. I want to say I love the poems about your grandparents so much, and they're beautiful. I did not grow up with language. The Abenaki language has been on the verge of extinction. We only had a few communities where the elders still spoke. And luckily we had some young people who went and literally lived with them for a couple of years at a time, learning language, and they're now teaching it. So that's where my connection is I've just been learning what I can of it as an adult.
Thank you. So any last questions for Cheryl or Max? Well, again, thank you. Yeah, I wish you could hear the applause instead of see it, but our gratitude to you for this wonderful evening. It looks like Judy Lou, oh, it's clapping. She's not raising her hand, she's clapping. So we have an open mic, and we did have some folks sign up for that. So we can move on to that portion of the evening. And our first poet on this list is John Neal. So John, if you want to unmute yourself and
Can you hear me okay?
yes, we can. Thank you.
My wife and I have for some time have been doing kind of some simplification and may try to move, and this poem came to me in that vein. It's called Recollections. The house's expanse overwhelms the sights of the older ones left behind. Yet past events in the once humble feeling enclosure come ever closer. Shadows of offspring now far away leave uneven spots on familiar walls. Notes from dance routines practiced at home guide through the mind's corridors. Impressions of footprints growing in size still linger in memory's carpet. Record-stretching, momentous feet stand erect in the aging family trophy case. Within the table's bowl of shells collected by many hands, bathing suits and towels like ocean waves ripple rhythmically. Crystals from a raucous ice cream fest still sparkle on the tip of the mind's tongue. Homework's numerical jumbles reappeared, unraveled only with rounds of concentration. Beginner Spanish phrases still linger amidst the drapes as if a porous gateway to diversity. Tantrums like cobwebs still stick their stubborn strands into the ceiling's remotest corners. Trails of loud laughter swirl around the living room table, a whirlpool at the family's epicenter. Aromatic tastes of holiday meats and sweets remain, nestled in the recesses of plush sofas and chairs. Pictures of all sizes escort their viewers back to fading glimpses still revered. Deepened blemishes on doors and chairs now match the complexion of the older inhabitants. Increasing creaks in the floors align with the overused joints of the property's owners. The house, painted, polished, and smoothed anew, has been seasoned for new occupants. Recollections and reflections with their owners will soon flee to the uncertain sea of new beginnings. Thank you.
That was lovely, John. Thank you. Yeah, we do kind of become our house after a while, scary as that is. Sometimes a little too cluttered, but thank you for that.
No.
So next up is David Mello.
Good evening, everyone. I used to live in Texas. I lived there about 9, 10 years, and I read a book on the native indigenous peoples of that area, especially Central Texas, where I live, and they were the Comanche Indians. So I wrote this poem some 8 years ago. It's called "The Last Chief." So long ago, we lingered there inside the canyon walls. Our order never came, the sign to guide us all. We made our camp at sunset with a fire to keep us warm. The howl of the coyote was our evening serenade. The walls of the adobe sheltered us at night. Inside the Palo Duro, the moon so full and bright. In pursuit of Quana, we stepped upon their land. Inside the tribal lodge, Mackenzie gave his hand. With the leader of his nation, they smoked the pipe of peace, a final tribute to the warrior, the last Comanche chief. Thank you.
Thank you, David. That was really nice.
Thank you.
So our next open micer, is Bill Luker, a new poetry friend. Hi, Bill.
Hi, Julia. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes,
Okay,
can you hear?
great.
I'm so glad to see you.
Well, I'm very glad to be here. This is the first time I've ever done anything like this.
Well, welcome from Texas, right?
Yeah, I live in north central Texas near Dallas, otherwise known as Baja, Oklahoma, to many of us natives here. And that's not a praise. That's not a statement of praise, at any rate. My poem is called "Walking in Post-America." Walking in Post-America, 1. 12-foot by 2.5-inch double thick plates of heavy tempered glass pop from steel frames. 6th-floor windows emit ripe melons and they explode as they land into blood-red flesh and white-green rind. A bag of bones hits the deck. Clouds of atomized concrete confound our sense of the way back home. But back or home are not whens or wheres you can get at from here. Not with all the energy ever, from the big bang boom till the moment most recent, the one before the last. No, you missed it. 2. Walking bears the feet to most post-America, to shattered vacancy and splitting mean sticker burrs, heat-ruptured swales of asphalt. To curbs, driveway cuts, tangled rebar exposed, slowly wilding. To those who shamble, returned from all the goddamn glory. The goddamned glory from the wrecking orders of the New World. In an invisible sub-basement, middle managers attend the torture. From the deeper pits, we squint through the sodium floodlight at stellar events said to be the cosmos and heaven and all that. But to see it, we must first believe it is there. So we search for an apex and hang pendula to fix our position. 3. In the Gulf's dead zone at the mighty mouth of the Mississippi, a revenant of Barrier Island Beach captures a raft of trash. Plastic, nylon netting, tar balls, cans, a pop bottle, dead fish hammered by sharks, nibbled by minnows, reduced by tiny squid, crab, and ghost shrimp. A corpse languishes in the surf. Paisley hydrocarbon rainbows caper across its whiskey skin, glyphs of a savage passage across bombarded rivers into a maw filled with faces, voices all raised over the big noise. Thank you.
Very powerful. Thank you for sharing tonight. Our next poet is Sharon Smith.
Hi. I've noticed that after 2 doses of vaccine, my poetry has lightened up. It's really interesting. Yeah, so this one was written post Pfizer. It's called The Real. Words are limiting, but they are what we have to explain moments of communion with something bigger, something sweet, all-encompassing, something that's universal and personal at the same time. Moments that make us glad we're alive on this planet. Stunning moments from childhood struck quiet by beauty in music, art, nature, by acts of kindness. Moments of awareness that make our hearts quiver. Is it religion, God? I know it has something to do with love. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. It's good to see you tonight. Our next open mic, the penultimate reader is Peggy Dietz Shea.
Can't hear you.
You've got it.
You're muted,
Unmute.
Peggy.
Peggy, can you unmute?
Can't hear you.
She can't unmute? No?
There we go.
There. Yay.
So I was saying, I run these things. I should know. Thank you, Riverwood. As always, you bring these wonderful poets here. It's really a treat for all of us. And thank you, Cheryl and Max, for your readings. They were very inspiring. I guess keeping in tune with Max's love of his grandparents, and also Cheryl acknowledging that. I had picked out this poem to read kind of in honor of Women's History Month, but also in honor for all the lost ones. In the dust, you. Too late, I learned that household dust is mostly skin cells shed or brushed away. The day after you died, I could have collected you, cloned you like a lamb, conceived a healthier you. I try not to think of the hired crew who vacuumed you out of your rugs and wiped you from your walls, of the auctioneer who sold the chair you swiveled and a table you marbled with spilled tea, of the friends who picked up your knitting needles, an unfinished woolen blanket wrapped inside your DNA. My mother saved me the cameo pin and scarf. She gave me that cheap Timex, a gift you'd hated and worn only out of duty to the giver. Who buys an 80-year-old watch with no numbers? I keep it, though it ticks no longer. For in between the expando links, the hardened soup of you conspires with the must of me to ensure we will hold each other again somewhere, without walls, without tyranny, where time can never keep all matter in its hands.
Thank you, Peggy.
Thank you.
Something to think about next time we dust. But not think about as well as you wrote about it. I'll take this opportunity to ask, is there anyone else who's going to read? I do have Margaret as our last reader, but if there's somebody who got brave at the last moment, you will have to unmute yourself and let us know. But otherwise, we've got Margaret Plaganis as our next reader.
Hello, folks, and thank you, poets, for your blessings and your readings tonight. Thank you. It's an honor to hear your work. I'd like to read a new piece that I wrote after hearing a poem by Debbie Gilbert recently. She wrote it after seeing a painting of a young woman plucking a swan. So I wrote this for Debbie. It's called Plucking a Swan. Our swans glide on dark pond water like fat moons, and asters glint like stars, while I yank downy feathers off one more dead swan draped across my knee. Twist, pull, pull, twist, grab, yank, fists full of pure white down, soft as hairs on my tender neck and thighs. What good comes from my constant plucking, from stuffing feathers into pillowcases and bed covers? Twist, yank, pull, down, soft as my neck and thighs. Star asters and moon swans fade into evening. A dead swan draped across my knees. Down, soft as my neck and thighs. Better to yank the wishbone out of this cooling carcass. Better to twist my future out, snap it off, my side of the bone. Better to clutch my fistful of wishes, better than our fistful of feathers.
Thank you, Margaret. Do we have any takers for anyone else? Okay, so I think it would be fun if everyone unmuted themselves and we could actually applaud Max and Cheryl and the open mic readers before we can conclude our evening. So go for it. I'd like to hear lots of yay!
Welcome, Max. Thank you.
Good job, people.
Good.
Great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And hopefully we see all of you back on, what's the date? Second Tuesday in April 13th, for the reading then. And I'll say good night on behalf of Riverwood Poetry Series. And
Good night.
Max and Cheryl.
All right.
Night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.